So it might help me in the Brown household a little bit. I really appreciate you asking me to be here, and it's good to see some familiar faces. And you know, I was really happy to talk about my my faith journey and how good God has been to me. And you know, my background really in the Y, and some of you know my story, but I'll quickly share with you that, you know, I've been involved in the YMCA pretty much all my life. And my parents, when I was a small boy, I was probably around 3 or 4 years old, would take me to the Y for swim lessons. And then around 7 or 8, I used to go to the Y on a regular basis to a program called Super Saturday. And I learned how to swim at the Y, and we did arts and crafts, and we did overnights at the Y. And then, you know, a funny thing happened in my life. A guy moved in next door to me, a guy by the name of Ron Sargent. And some of you might know Ron.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Ron was the president, and he became the president and CEO of the Plainfield YMCA. I was about maybe 13 or 14 years old at the time. And I had no idea how much of a presence he was going to have in my life. And Ron went on to be the national field director for the Midwest at YUSA, and then he retired. He was working for the retirement fund as a senior vice president. But growing up in New Jersey, I got really interested in basketball. And you know, like most teenagers, you get to a point where you don't go to the Y as much. And a friend of mine said, you really should go to the Y to work on your game. And I thought, wow, I hadn't thought about that. I used to go to the Y all the time. So when I went to the Y, I inquired about a membership, and I inquired about a job. And the next thing I knew, they said, meet me down here Saturday morning. And I was scrubbing showers and cleaning toilets and handing out towels and washing gym bags. So my first job at the Y, I was a janitor. You know, they called it the health club attendant. That was a nice title, but I was really the janitor. And I had no idea what Mr. Sargent did. I just knew he had this nice office, and that he lived next door, and he worked at the Y. And then I worked after school programs and summer camp. And then I went to Roberts Wesleyan College and see my good friend Dan Katzenberger on. And Dan and I were actually roommates in college and teammates in basketball in college. And you know, all through college, I never once thought about working for the Y. It never entered my mind. And I graduated from college. I couldn't find a job. And my mom said to me, why don't you call Mr. Sargent? And he told me about the national vacancy list. And they had a position at the Rochester YMCA, where Roberts Wesleyan is located. And I applied for it. And I became a youth director. And I did that for a few years. And when I took the job, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to do this for about a year or so until I can find a real job. But this will be really cool because I get to play basketball at lunchtime. And then after, you know, when the school day ends, I get to play basketball with the kids. I just wanted to play basketball. Well, a woman that worked with me in Rochester moved to Albany, and she became the vice president of operations, and she recruited me to run the Albany Y. And then my career just grew from here. And again, when I came to Albany, I told my wife, we'll be here for about 3 or 5 years. Well, we've been here 28 years now. And we have 4 beautiful children that we've raised here. And I've just been really, really blessed. The last 14 years, I've been the CEO. But I can tell you, I've honestly done every job that you can imagine in the YMCA. Camp director, youth director. I've had to be the interim property director. I've been a lifeguard. You know, I've done it all. And I've just had you know, a blast working at the Y. And I like to tell people, I tell people this all the time. I look at the YMCA as my ministry. I really do. I look at it as my ministry and my opportunity to serve and to help build God's kingdom and to help, you know, grow God's kingdom. And I really believe that. I mean, I really believe that. I've been very passionate about YMCA work, particularly working with youth. I really feel like I'm still a youth director. And, you know, I think without taking up a lot of time, that's my quick story in the Y movement.
That's excellent, Dave. Well, I know you have you put a lot of fingerprints on a lot of people, including me, along the way. So thanks for that. So we do have a couple of questions, and I know this time's going to go by quickly, but would you talk a little bit more, if you would, around your faith journey and how that really probably has strengthened and given you the support you needed to really influence others along the way?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, my parents, both of my parents were really strong churchgoers. And my experience in the church was really in the Black church, the African American, African Methodist Episcopal Church. And I remember being a small boy and my mom teaching me how to pray. And it was, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. And I remember that being a really small boy, her teaching me that prayer and us going to church. And my mother was the daughter of a Baptist minister. And so going to church on Sunday and being involved in the church was really an important thing in the Brown household. And I can remember being a teenager and my mom dragging me on hot Saturday afternoons for some type of special event or a Sunday night for a special event at the church. And I wanted to be out playing basketball, or I wanted to watch, the local NBA game. But it's been part of my life, since I was a kid. And I think somebody needs to mute their phone in the background there.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay, the host muted me a couple of times there. I don't know if that's a good sign or not, bad sign or what's going on. So when I was a kid going into middle school, a funny thing happened. The school district that I attended went on strike. And my mom made the decision that I was still going to go to school. And so she sent me to this very small private Christian school called Covenant Christian. And I don't remember exactly where I was or how old I was when I accepted Christ, but I do remember that it was in middle school and that it was part of a retreat that I attended. And we had some Bible study sessions that we did. And during those Bible study sessions, we then had to go off on our own and find a quiet place at this retreat and think about our relationship with God. And I think that's when I really began to first establish my relationship with God. And, when I look at my life, my entire life has really been in these types of circumstances where I had an affiliation to the church and to be around Christian folks, including going to college and working for a Christian organization. And I've had a lot of influences. And one of the things that really influenced me was my grandfather, who was a Baptist minister. And my wife and my mother had a very strong bond because my wife's father is a minister. And they both joked about they wouldn't wish that on their worst enemy, to be the daughter of a minister. They thought that was a joke between the two of them. But I've always had that circle of influence. And at times I really think, like most of us in our journey, we take those things for granted. We think that, hey, if you're just, doing the right thing and you've got good values, that's what being a Christian's all about. But I've been fortunate to have good friends and good mentors who've actually helped me grow spiritually and understand what having a relationship with Christ really looks like and what God can do for you.
David, I'd heard a lot of that story, but not all of that. So yeah, thank you. So I want to change gears a minute. You have spent a lot of your career, I know, advancing across the movement, diversity, inclusion, and global. for many of us, and you've been really a mentor for many of us along the way. And that's been really a big topic that's been discussed recently. How do you see your faith intersecting with diversity, inclusion, and global work? And what advice might you give this group as they think about it with everything going on now in our country?
Well, one of the things that concerns me when we have the diversity and inclusion conversation is that the Christian faith isn't always included in that. In fact, I've been involved in some conversations where people have actually said, hey, I think it's time for us to take the C out of the YMCA. And, and as we look to have a new national CEO, one of the things I haven't heard people say is, the next leader really should be a Christian. And some of that concerns me. And some of that, I think, is where we need to have more conversation around, and that the C in the YMCA is important. And that doesn't mean that you can't respect other people's faith or it can't be part of the conversation. But it is a Christian organization, and it's a worldwide, Christian organization. And I think that we don't talk about it enough. And so, for example, when we look at our ERGs, we don't have a Christian ERG. I think it's something that we should be thinking about as an organization. 70% of the country is Christian. And, but being inclusive and being respectful of other faiths is important, because we do share a lot of similar values. We may pray different, we may call our God a different name, but we share some similar values. And I think there's room for that. And I really think that we have to start having that conversation more, as opposed to saying, let's make the C small and not talk about it at all.
Well, that's great. And that sort of leads to my next question, Dave. Related to that, if you were starting to give advice to this group today of leaders, different walks, what advice would you also give them around how they can take that to their local communities, how that shows up to them? You have a way to do it in your community there in Albany, but what would you suggest for this group of folks on the phone today?
Well, I think it's important for us to just be authentic. I think it's important for us to not be uncomfortable letting people know, this is my faith and this is my walk. And having small groups and saying, we're going to have a Christian emphasis group. We're going to have a Christian breakfast, a prayer breakfast, just implementing those kinds of things, leaving the door open for those who want to walk through it, and, inviting people in, but not, beating them up with the Bible, so to speak, and I think that those are all fine. I think those are all things that are, well and good and fine to do. I think sometimes people are afraid to do some of these things because they think that they're going to be ostracized. And I do think that the Y should be a place where we provide safe spaces for people to practice their faith. And not just the Christian faith, but other faiths as well. I think there's a lot of opportunities to do that. And, having prayer breakfast meeting or interfaith meetings, or having Christian Bible studies are all great ways. And, there's some things that we do in our association, and it allows people to participate. We probably need to do more.
Yeah. Well, last question before I open it up, maybe for a couple of questions. So Dave, with all the unrest that we've seen in the country over the last, for a long time, but particularly of recent, what role do you think the Y should be playing in trying to advance this equity, equality, and work around the movement? And how can we as Y leaders, it's sort of similar to the question I asked before, but a little bit differently, to really advance equity and how it relates to faith and Christianity?
So most of you know that I've been presenting the Equitable Communities Agenda. And, we've had some good success in presenting that. But not everybody's been in agreement with it. Some people feel that it's political. Some people feel that it really focuses on race, which it doesn't. It does certainly talk about race and being anti-racist. But some of the language that I use that I hope this group will really resonate with this group is that we want to serve the least of these, right? Because that was really Jesus's message, that to serve the least of these. And I think that if we focus on how can we serve the least of these, those that are marginalized, those that have been oppressed, those who face systemic racism, those that face acts of hatred and violence, those who don't have access to food, who don't have access to healthcare, who don't have strong educational systems. You know, I was talking with some friends of mine recently about kids who drop out of school. And one of the things I said to them is, you know, if you're a kid and you've got 3 brothers and sisters and, you know, 4 pairs of pants to share amongst you, you don't have electric in your house, you don't have food, are you going to be worried about your homework? Or are you going to be more worried about what you wear to school and if you're going to have heat and food tonight, right? So I think that we have huge opportunities to help correct those situations in our communities. And I don't think that the community work that we're trying to do should be mutually exclusive, you know, membership. You know, they're not mutually exclusive. We can do membership and we can do community services. So I think us as Christian leaders need to be more focused on the least of these and being in the places that where we can definitely witness to people by helping them get housing, helping them get access to healthcare, helping them get food. Don't get me wrong, coming to the Y is important. Living a healthy lifestyle is important. Working out is important. But I think we need to do more of these other things in reaching some of those communities. And we have the programs. Okay, a lot of these programs exist. And one of the great things about the Y is if you don't have the program, you can call just about any Y in the country and get the name and get an idea and then tailor it to fit your community and your YMCA.
Yeah, the least of these days, that they all shall be one. That is excellent. Thank you for that. And expected great thoughtful answers. Let's open it up a minute for Janelle for maybe a couple of questions before we go into our break. And I know Dave and I talked, we knew this time was going to go by very, very quickly. And as you can see, the genuineness and authenticity of Dave Brown. That's why we all love him so much. So thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
So we'll see if there's a question or what, Janelle, I'll let you process that.
I'll let Tim continue to host. That's fine, Tim. You can do that.
Yeah, thanks, David. Anyone have 1 or 2 questions? Maybe in the chat box, just list your name so I know to call on you. If you've got a question you want to ask Dave Brown, just a follow-up comment, real brief.
Tim, I've got a question, Tim.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Barely.
What's your career in your life?
Can't hear you.
Sorry, Eric, I can't hear you, man.
He's in the Grand Cayman.
Sorry, David, can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, I hear you now. Now I don't.
What's next for you in your career and your life?
What's next for me in my career and my life? Well, I don't know. Hopefully the Capital District Y will let me be here for a while longer. I don't have any immediate plans. My oldest son got married about 1.5 years ago. So I am hopeful that we'll have grandkids here in another year or so. But nothing in particular. I'm trying to get to where Dave Byrd is.
We got time for one more. We got time for one more quick question. Bruce Tamlyn had a question for you, Dave Brown.
Hey, Bruce.
Hey, Dave. Nice to see you.
Good to see you as well.
I'm glad you're about 1.5 hours down the road from us, and you've been a part of Silver Bay, so thank you for that. I want to just ask. There's a kind of a slow thing happening in the movement where some Ys are starting to look at their history around racism, and some Ys are actually asking some folks historians to look at what has been their history around racism. And some Ys, you know, we're keeping people of color out into the 60s in terms of that. Do you, in your work and the leadership that you're providing on this equity issue across our country, do you think that the movement should somehow, with national leadership and local leadership, somehow address some of our past and where we really were not, we were not open to people of color? And that's the truth of a number of Ys. And I think I would be interested in what you think we need to do with that.
So first, before I answer your question, I want folks to know Bruce and I are good friends, and I used to go to leader school retreats, and when at night when all the kids were asleep, Bruce and I would play wiffle ball in the gym for hours. I mean, hours of wiffle ball, one-on-one wiffle ball. I think it ended in a tie, but we had the best time. So I have fond memories of Bruce.
I do.
Bruce, I would tell everyone that I think the Y should address it. And I do think the Y is making a sincere effort to address it. Our town hall meeting, African American CEO town hall meeting that we did in February, a beautiful video was shown on the history of African American leaders in the Y movement. And it did speak to these things that happened in the YMCA. And it showed some very powerful images of things where the Y was segregating. And I think Linda Gonzalez and her team at YUSA are really kind of focused on some of this messaging. And I see Renata is on the call here as well. And the DIG team has a lot of talent, and they're talking about these things in small circles. But I absolutely think it's something that we should be talking more about and addressing. I got a phone call just yesterday from a good friend of mine. There's a program that coaches are holding. It's called Eracism. It's college coaches. Long story short, there was a famous game between some black college players and Duke University that was held in secret in the 50s, and it was held out of YMCA. And because of it was, you know, and now they're bringing this out. I'll forward it to you, Bruce. You might have some interest in reading about it. But there's a lot of stuff that has happened at the YMCA historically that nobody knows about. So I think it should be talked about for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Well, thank you, David Brown, for sharing that. Bruce, for that question. David Brown, I think we could listen to you for another hour. You just really good stories and really good comments. And so thanks for sharing today. Thanks, David Byrd, for interviewing him and introducing David to even more Y leaders. So appreciate your comments.
Well, we're lucky to have him. Let's give Dave maybe a round of applause for his good work today. Thank you, Dave.
Oh, thank you all. Really appreciate it.
Well, before we head to small group breakouts, and I hope you can stick around for those, I think you'll enjoy the networking and getting to kind of process these really powerful insights from David Brown. We do have a special guest from another country. You know, this gathering has been attracting Christians from around the world. And so Oscar leads the YMCA in Chile, and he's on here. And so I'm going to have my friend Francisco Townsend just do a super brief intro of Oscar. Oscar's just going to say hi to us. If you've never met Oscar before, he's just an amazing man of God. So Francisco, do you want to do a little intro of Oscar? And Oscar, can you say hi?
Hi, thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to visit you, all of you. A greeting for Valparaiso and for Chile. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you. We appreciate you being here with us. All right. Well, Janelle, you're going to move us all to some different small groups. So just everyone hang on. And when she gives you a chance to go to a group, just hit accept. Each one will have a facilitator to kind of lead the conversation. So enjoy the time together.
Judy, can you hear me? You can unmute yourself if you're there. Okay, I'll try to get you unmuted, but you need to accept, I think you just hit the blue button to get into your breakout room. Do you see the button, Judy?
Oh, you can hear me now. Sorry. I was typing in the chat. I think I was in group 1. For some reason, every time I go in, I get exited. So I think I was in 1.
Okay, well, I'm gonna just move you again just because maybe it'll work this time. So I'm just gonna move you.
Okay.
Yeah.